Test, test.
Good morning. Starting a little late here, but welcome to the September 18th Septic to Sewer Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. Roll call, please.
Chair Neil Hannigan.
Present.
Member John Liscombe.
Here.
Vice Chair Arthur Zepp.
Here.
Let the record show that Member Ron Kern and Member Roy Shines are absent with notice.
Okay. Pledge of allegiance. Please join me.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Approval of the minutes from August 8th meeting. I have one comment that I would like to make. On page 2, under the item statement of purpose, there's a town clerk note, a copy of the statement of purpose is available to view at Town Hall. I would like to include it in here for posterity. When I was starting this, the meeting minutes and the documents that were included from over 20 years ago were so helpful in getting this thing started. And I don't want things to get lost. I would like it to be available in its full
Absolutely.
content, please.
We can change the wording from a copy of the statement of purpose is available to view at Town Hall to a copy of the statement of purpose is attached as Exhibit A.
Thank you. Anything else, John?
No, I didn't have anything. No.
I have no comments, so I move that be approved with the change.
Anyone like to second?
I'll second it.
Unanimous?
Yes.
Okay, the first part of the meeting we'll have for public comment. Not a discussion, but anything that people in the audience would like to bring up. Do we have anyone that would like to be on the agenda? Wow. Okay, let it show that public comment was offered, and so far there isn't anyone wishing to speak. The main item today is the town engineer report, which was directed by the town commission, and it's going to be presented by Lisa Trepepi, the town engineer. Welcome, Lisa.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, everyone in the audience. I'm actually here with two other people that I would like to introduce to you all that were a part of creating the Septic to Sewer report. The first person's Adam Swaney, who's my business partner at Ingenuity Group. He's going to talk about the cost estimate and the conceptual layout of the different types of systems. And then the other gentleman to my immediate right is Lou Aragema. He is a professional engineer as well, who works with us from time to time on projects like these. He has over 3 decades of experience in government with respect to treatment facilities. He was the city engineer for the city of Coral Springs at 125,000 population, the utility director for about a population of about 60,000, and then the executive director for the Riviera Beach Utility District here in Palm Beach County. So he's going to talk about the different types of systems and how you go about rates and how utilities charge their residents. So before I begin, well, first of all, this study was originally ultimately to go to the commission, and then the committee was created. So we're here before you. There are a few tweaks that that some of you, and I thank you, that have read this and caught that are tweaks that need to be revised. They're not significant with respect to the report. But before we give this to the commission, we'll make one more revision. So if there's anything that you need us to relook at, we know some of the units are off, but understand this is conceptual. So you'll see the word approximately a lot. So this is also, the intent was also not only to share with the commission, who's not involved in the technicalities of septic to sewer like you all are, but it was also meant for our residents. So our residents can understand what their options are, and then be part of the process as we move forward. So that was the original intent. So I can't help but smile and say thank you to some of the folks in the audience because they were here with me 20 years ago or more. And I think it's important that we understand that, and I'm just going to take this opportunity to Greg Dunham, raise your hand. He was the manager over 20 years ago when we started discussing this issue. I know, Neil, you found some minutes or something of us way back in the day.
Absolutely.
Gail's here, and Betty's here. They were on the commission at the time. So there was an environmental committee, and we all worked together to look at the options way back then. Then there was this lady called Hurricane Irene, the first one that came through, and the focus totally changed. We had residents that had a tremendous amount of damage, property damage, car damage, had to evacuate immediately with nothing but some of their clothes in their hands. And the focus had to change. And the good news is we tackled that. The stormwater management program that we've been following for the last 20 years has been a success. It's not been perfect. However, we've managed to go from area to area and address issues, and we'll continue to do so. Because now we have another friend, and it's called sea level rise and the changing of our environment, which wasn't even a discussion back then. But now has come to our forefront. The last legislative session, as you all know, we have a new governor, and part of his initiative was to address the algae blooms that were occurring in the St. Lucie River and throughout the areas north of us. And he's been dedicated to continue to understand, alleviate, and maybe ultimately eliminate any more of those types of situations in the future. Big task, because when you deal with the environment, it's not a black and white issue. It's not a mathematical equation with an answer, an easy answer. There have been several scientists that have gone before the legislature and have explained that in their opinion, there is a direct link between septic systems and these algae blooms, especially when the septic systems are located densely within each other near water bodies. So as that continues to progress on the political side statewide, here's a little bit of history that's been progressing here townwide. So as this environmental committee moved on and we started dealing with stormwater and not so much wastewater, it didn't mean that staff wasn't looking at these issues in between dealing with stormwater issues. Usually for the last 20 years, every winter time, and Greg can relate to this, our northern friends would be here. Systems in the multifamily area were always being taxed to the max because everybody's here. And we would meet with the individual condos and the individual representatives for the associations to listen to their troubles or their challenges. And so over the years, we've had several folks come in, like I said, usually during season, expressing to us that the rules are starting to get more stringent on these package plans, that there are not enough folks with that expertise that could manage these plants, and that the parts to fix these plants have become more sparse and more of a challenge. So that's what has happened over the years. Some of the great news is that we have some folks and Gail's from Crown Colony, some great news in that we've had a system where Crown Colony and that takes care of Colonial Ridge and Ocean Manor have done an unbelievable job in revamping their package plan. And they feel comfortable at this time that that system can run without any urgency to make a change. And it's taken a very long time to get there, but they've gotten there. And kudos to everybody involved in that. So let's just talk a little bit about the existing systems, and then I'm going to turn it over to Lou to talk about the 3 possible systems that we can have. So, Ron's not here, and I know Neil knows a lot about the different types of systems, so just be patient. You could probably state this yourselves. However, it's important that we have on the record and have people in the audience and residents understand the 3 different options, the cost associated with it, and where we need to go from here. So with respect to single-family residences, we have about 730 single-family homes. I'm going to say approximate because every day we got 1 knocked down and 2 being built. To the best of our knowledge, staff and I, including myself, we receive virtually no complaints, if not no complaints whatsoever with respect to people's individual septic tanks. They seem to be managing them fine. Nobody comes in and says, I can't handle this is not working. We have, in the last few years, folks coming in and putting in advanced treatment systems, which we call the HOOT system. Those are very, very complex and expensive, septic tank and drain field type of systems. We've been told that they cost around $40,000 to install. And so we're seeing more and more of those, and I would suspect that that would continue to increase as we move forward with bigger and more extravagant single-family homes. With respect to multifamily, we do have over 900 multifamily units. It's approximately, we're still tweaking that, approximately 15 package plants, which means that these multifamily developments have their own internal gravity system. So, and that gravity system feeds into this package plant. So if a conversion were to ever take place, the individual gravity systems of these multifamily areas would not, for the most part, this is conceptual, would not need to be changed. So those multifamily areas, in their parking areas, I would not suspect there to be a lot of disruption. What would change, and depending on the system, would be their ultimate package plan. Okay? So I wanted to make sure that everybody understands that. So now, also with respect to the state of Florida, being concerned with sea level rise obviously could be an issue with respect to how we actually build our drain fields and at what elevation. Also, in the last several years, The health department has mandated that the town of Ocean Ridge has to submit, prior to our approval, a set of plans, the applicant. If they are adding an addition, a bedroom, a new house, those plans need to be submitted to the health department, reviewed and approved prior to us as staff reviewing the plans. This was never the case back 20 years ago. So you can see that government now is getting a little more strict on how we're looking at septic tanks and drain fields on barrier islands. And so the process is a little bit longer for staff than it was in the past, but that's been a mandate that we've been following for the last few years. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lou, who's going to talk about 3 different types of systems, predominantly with respect to the single-family home areas. Okay? Let me pull my stuff.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having us. Many of us, if not all of us, have heard the expression, "it all flows downhill." That is the simple definition of a gravity sewer system. It consists of sewer mains, manholes, and it flows down into eventually a lift station, and then the lift station pumps it to the wastewater treatment plant. On the barrier island in Ocean Ridge, we have to have a master pump station, which gets it across the intracoastal and over to Boynton Beach and into their utility system. So coming out of a single-family home, it flows into the main, goes from the main down into the pump station, and because of the linear situation of the island, there may be some smaller pump stations that relift the sewage to get it to the master station, and eventually, again, it goes away, and that's all citizens and the public are concerned about. As Lisa mentioned, the multifamily areas, they already have a portion of that gravity system which goes into their package plants. As you get into preliminary and final design, you'll have to tweak that probably, because depending on where the sewer mains are, what their elevation is, you may have to go back onto the property to adjust whatever it is to get it there. So all in all, that's the simplest type of gravity system, sewer systems that we have. It's predominant throughout the nation. There are other types which I'll get into now. The next is a vacuum sewer system. And this is a series of pipes in the ground that eventually get to one large main. It's kind of called a pump station / vacuum system. And it serves 2 purposes. The set of lines that you have in the street, which are relatively shallow, they create a vacuum from this main system. And at each individual home, you will have a little vacuum pit. So basically, the sewage from your home goes into this pit. It sits there till it gets to a certain point, and then it gets literally sucked out through the vacuum system. Makes it to the main pump station, and then you convert it over to the lift station, which then pushes it across the intracoastal and again to the wastewater treatment plant for the city of Boynton Beach. And in the multifamily areas, you do have an ability to have that conversion. It's a little bit more complex. You have to look at each individual unit just to see what you can do to convert it. So, next we can go into a low-pressure sewer system, which we did not evaluate, partially because we were told that the city of Boynton Beach doesn't have facilities they don't really have any low-pressure systems in their particular utility, so it's out there, but we just didn't evaluate it per se. So this one, again, involves another pit in front of your house which contains a grinder pump. So basically, it takes your sewage, grinds it up, and then it pushes it into a low-pressure pipe network. It's this low-pressure force main. Again, it's relatively shallow, but it's not going to blow up or anything because of the pressure. It's very, very low. Again, this will have to eventually go into a master lift station to get it across the intracoastal, and those are the things that we have to take into consideration. This one probably has the most maintenance responsibilities for the utility because of the grinder pumps and the low pressure system, etc. So again, we didn't really evaluate the cost per se, but again, I believe that both the low pressure and the vacuum are probably a little bit more expensive overall than just the plain gravity system. But again, Adam will get into that a little later as far as costs and stuff like that goes, and it's just just some options that you as the committee may want to look at, and then in coordination with the city of Boynton Beach, because ultimately I believe they will probably be maintaining this. I don't think the town has they don't really have a utilities department per se, so I don't believe they would want to unless they wanted to get into that business, that's certainly up to them. So those were the three systems, and now I just want to get a little bit into the city of Boynton Beach current utility rates. And right now, you are all customers of the city of Boynton Beach. You get a water bill, and that water bill is a tiered water bill. You have a monthly base charge. Everybody pays that monthly base charge, and there is a difference between single family versus multifamily because of the size of the meters, and so you pay, and then you pay it based on how much you use. So the lowest tier is in this case it's $1.69 per 1,000 gallons, and then as you go up, the amount goes up. So that's the tiered schedule that you have. The wastewater they don't have meters per se. It's all based on how much water you use. So theoretically, you take in so much water, you use so much, and so much water goes back into the wastewater system. Now, my understanding is that the city of Boynton Beach has extended to Ocean Ridge the same exact rates that are paid within. I'm going to assume that is also going to be for the wastewater rates. So for other utilities, once you go outside the boundaries, sometimes they can increase it by 25% the rates. But because of the agreement that you have, that's of benefit to the citizens of an Ocean Ridge. So again, as far as utility rates go, it's the city of Boynton Beach that increases rates or adds whatever it needs to. It has a major capital program, so on and so forth, and we are customers of the city of Boynton Beach. So that probably will change from year to year, but this is just a snapshot of what it is today. And I'm not sure if they're raising the rates in fiscal year 2020, but if they do, it'll probably be a consumer price index increase. So that's in short what we have for utility rates. And now I'll pass it on to Adam, who'll talk about the specific systems.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, sir.
You can use a combination of vacuum and gravity, correct?
That is a possibility, yes, sir.
Okay. It doesn't have to be one or. It's whatever.
Again, we're more in a conceptual phase right now, so we're just giving you the overall. But once you get into a preliminary design, now you can start, thinking out of the box, and you're absolutely correct. Depending on where you are, it's a possibility, yes, sir.
Can I ask one quick question? Because I've heard this asked. So on the vacuum system, there is evidently some shared device on the property.
Yes.
And I think the folks from Boynton said that the responsibility for the maintenance of that is of the utility system, not the homeowners. Is that correct?
That's what I would perceive, because quite frankly, as a homeowner, I wouldn't have the ability to maintain that. Otherwise, I'd have to hire somebody for that.
Plus on top of that, it's one unit serving two homes. Now you have the homeowners.
Yeah,
responsible.
it becomes quite convoluted.
So I think we need to sort that out so the
I'll
public
add in,
knows.
the Village of Palm Springs has a lot of vacuum sewer, and they do maintain the vacuum pit. And like you said, they're usually shared between 2
Right.
and 3 homes per pit.
Yeah, and
There are people who, saying, wait, I don't want to do vacuum because of that. We need to.
Right.
Yes,
And
solid
typically, there'll be clean outs, and just like in a gravity system, if it's on the house side of the clean out, it's your responsibility. If it's on the right-of-way side, it's, the town, the city's responsibility. And you'll have something similar to that with a vacuum system, because, again, it could still clog. I mean, that always is possible. So, before you even get into the mechanics of it, you have to see if there's anything upstream that's causing the problem.
Thank you.
Okay.
Could I ask a question of the audience? Is there anyone here from Boynton Utility today? Okay, there is. I would like to have, the town get from Boynton Beach what the average water bill is in Ocean Ridge, and if we could get it broken down by single-family homes versus the average for someone who's in a multifamily. I would also like to find out if Boynton is able to, or does have any adjustment to the water bill, whether it's for irrigation versus for home use or pool use or whatever. And the third thing I would like to find out is if Boynton currently has any capital charges or additional charges over water usage that they put on their bill.
I mean, I actually checked that, and obviously get it from them, but there's a base charge and there's a service charge. They don't have a separate capital charge.
There shouldn't be any capital charges
Right.
because the town of Ocean Ridge owns its pipes.
Well, no, even but I would imagine.
I'm talking about sewer. Excuse me, I didn't differentiate. The last one I'm talking about for sewer, that if and when they do improvements or whatever, do they put that into their base rate changes, or do they actually put a surcharge on them?
They have the ability to do a capital charge on the bill based on the maintenance and the infrastructure that they put in, yes.
Are they doing that now?
We don't-
In other words, am I
In-
seeing the total
in
cost when I
Boynton, you
look at
mean?
this? Pardon?
You're talking about for Boynton,
I'm talking about
Itself.
Boynton right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about what would happen to us.
so you're talking about for the pipes in Boynton, we can ask them.
Yeah.
I would suspect that areas that are coming online, they have a few areas that are coming online currently in Boynton. I would suspect that those areas would probably have a capital charge, which would be another line item on the bill.
And that's what I'm getting at.
Right.
This is only based on usage.
Correct, I understand, I
Yeah.
understand that, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
make people aware that there may be more charges than what they're seeing
Right.
today.
There wouldn't be any more for the water. Now, I believe there was an agreement done many years ago with respect to folks that were using drinking water for irrigation. And those rates may be higher, I believe, because, again, we are being a little more environmentally conscious these days, and there's been a movement to try to conserve water. And folks that are using our water distribution system for irrigation consume large amounts of water, and therefore those rates, I think, jump higher, but we can check into that with respect to irrigation.
Thank you.
If I may add, we talked about capital charges. They're also known as impact fees. And typically, as you're bringing a new system in, you may have some connection charges and you may have some other impact fees, which are the initial charges that you pay up front, because now you're affecting in this case, the wastewater treatment plant and its capacity. So that's that portion of it. Yes,
I
sir.
think you've covered those, though, in your report.
Yes.
But I don't think we've addressed capital ongoing monthly charges. Anyway.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, and typically what they'll do is they'll roll those into your fees. They don't usually hit you with a set amount. Usually it's rolled over either into an impact fee, a connection fee, or a rate fee. And then I just wanted to address the irrigation water. Sometimes if it's all going through 1 meter, it's this charge. And I believe there's a separate set of rates for irrigation. So what you would have to do is get a second meter that is specifically for irrigation. And the rates might be a little less, I just don't know what they are offhand, but so then you would get 2 separate bills, one for your domestic water, one for your irrigation water, and I believe those rates may be just a little bit lower. But anyway, that's an option that you as a homeowner or a condo association can always utilize.
Thank you.
Good morning. As Lisa mentioned, my name's Adam Swaney. I'm a professional engineer. I work with Lisa at Ingenuity Group. And I'm going to be going through some of the conceptual systems that we laid out for this report. First, here is a layout of a conceptual gravity system, what it may look like when it's finally designed. And I put a cheat sheet. You may not be able to see it up there on the easel, but the blue area is the north end of the town, and the yellow is the south end of the town. We have north looking to the left up here on the screen, so you can kind of orient yourself. The pointer, I don't think it's going to work on the TVs, but this is the Boynton Inlet here on the north end of town, and this is the black line is the conceptual gravity system that would flow to a variety of lift stations. With this option, there'd be about 24, I believe, lift stations, and 15 of those are from existing package plants that would be converted to lift stations, and another 9 of them would be brand new. So most of the wastewater would flow via gravity down this trunk line and make it to for example, a lift station here would be placed in front of Ocean Club, and then from there, the force mains going down A1A, or North Ocean Boulevard to the south.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
You said there's existing lift stations out there?
Well, there's existing package plants.
Oh, okay.
And,
That's
and
what
right
you meant by
now,
that.
yeah,
Okay.
and they'll be converted to
Okay.
a lift station
Thank you.
if this option's selected. So that they're no longer discharging where they'd be going into the force main. All right, this is the next portion to the south. You have Ocean Park here and Town Hall. So the force main and gravity also are coming down A1A, and there would be a master lift station somewhere in the vicinity of Oceanfront Park or around Town Hall, and the force main here would be underneath the intercoastal and would go into the Boynton system. All right, and further south, this is Ocean Ave crossing here on the left side. Several more lift stations scattered throughout in this area. And then continuing further south, we would have another master lift station here, somewhat in the vicinity of Crown Colony, that would collect from the gravity system this portion of the town and pump again under the intercoastal to the Boynton Beach system. So you'd have likely two crossings under the intercoastal with this option. All right. And then the next option we analyzed was the vacuum sewer. And as you asked earlier, if this would be a combined system, the way we looked at this is it would be combined with gravity because you do have some existing gravity already with the multifamily. So it would leave those systems in place and just add vacuum sewer for the other areas that are not being served currently.
Adam, when you talk about lift stations, can you talk about the size of the lift stations between the master and the other lift?
You probably wouldn't notice a difference seeing them. Above ground, it would look pretty similar. Any lift stations that are going to be publicly owned by the utility require about a 30-foot by 30-foot easement, or 30 by 40, I don't remember the exact dimension. So you need a fairly good size of land available to place these. But most of the improvements are underground, but everything within that easement would be fenced off, and you could put those in an empty lot or extra road right-of-way or parkland, somewhere where you can kind of put them out of the way and hide them.
You're talking about the master lift station.
Or, well, master, but even the other lift stations would be similar in size to a master. The master would cost more because you have larger pumps, but you wouldn't really notice much of a difference above ground between a master and any of the other ones.
Okay.
Is there a building above ground for the non-master ones?
No,
Okay.
the building's not required for any of these on the, and this is just talking about the gravity option. When you get into, I'll show you on the vacuum, that typically is within a building. The pump stations are much larger with the vacuum
So
system.
I want to clarify, so I understand, so we're not counting the master one. Let's talk with gravity, not counting the lift stations, all these multiple lift stations.
Yeah, about 20.
What are
or so.
people going to see from the street?
Generally, they're fenced. You'd have an electrical control panel. All of the, most of the piping and all of the pumps, everything's underground, so you wouldn't see that. Really, they just look like a concrete slab that's fenced, and usually you screen it with a hedge, so you don't really see
There's just
anything.
sort of like a meter there, it's not a
Yeah,
big
you'll see
building.
some electrical equipment
Right.
above ground,
So
a
what I'm trying
panel.
to say is you don't see a building,
No,
okay?
no building. And if it's properly screened with landscaping, all you would see is a hedge and a fenced area.
But the master one could be different.
No, the master would look about the same.
Okay, so it's on the.
Yeah,
on the
it's all,
vacuum.
really what's underground is what's different about the master. The larger wet well, bigger pumps, that sort of thing.
But didn't you say you're gonna convert the treatment plants? Because those are above ground, right?
Yes,
Package plants?
those could remain. It doesn't have to. A lot of that equipment could be removed, the above ground
Oh, you could
buildings.
remove,
Yeah, I mean, it could stay in place depending on costs.
But you use the same location and.
Yeah, you would use the pit that's already there.
And you're
the wet
adding
well,
9 new ones, right?
And the gravity line that's there, you could reuse.
And you're only adding 9 new, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, with this layout, it would be 9 approximately. All right. Into the vacuum system. Again, we're starting at the north end of town here by the inlet. The purple lines here are the vacuum suction lines. And these would vary in size anywhere from 4-inch to 10-inch. And these are much shallower than the gravity. You don't need to go downhill with these. They can go on level ground, so you can keep them 3 to 5 feet down in most cases. So it's less impact in construction. There's no pump stations in this area on this layout. So further south, we would have one of our vacuum pump stations right here in the conceptual. We laid it out somewhere in the vicinity of Town Hall and Oceanfront Park. It's fairly central, and there's Ocean Ridge already owns some of the land here. And this pump station would be larger. These generally look like a house. There's an actual building, and you can, in Palm Springs, there's about 3 of them. They look like single-family homes. They kind of try to blend in with the rest of the neighborhoods usually. And from the pump station here, there's a force main that's going to also cross under the intercoastal, similar to what you have with the gravity system. It's pumping under the intercoastal to the Boynton system. All right, moving south, more vacuum lines going down all the roads to service all the houses.
Where
And
is Ocean Ridge or Hibiscus?
I can't see this, I think the lights are way too bright to see anything.
Hibiscus. Let's see.
It's close to the building.
Oh, it's on, gonna be on the, yeah, well, here's Woolbright, crossing right here.
It's on the bottom left. Okay, so what's going there in that area?
Well, with this option, this is the vacuum option, there would be a vacuum line, coming down Hibiscus. And, each of the houses would, well, per 2 single-family homes, you would be sharing a valve pit, which would go up by the road. You wouldn't really see it's underground, you would see something above ground, about the size of a manhole. And, from there, you wouldn't see the vacuum line, it's all underground once it's installed.
It's elevated?
No, underground.
Underground, okay.
All right. In this area, there would be a second master pump station. This one we located pretty close to the Woolbright dry detention area. Doesn't have to go there, but it's already Ocean Ridge owned land, so it may be able to fit there. That'll have to be figured out in more advanced engineered designs. And from there,
Where is that?
I'm sorry?
Where is that? Define it.
Just on the north side of Woolbright, there's a dry detention area.
The north side of Wilbrite, there's houses.
Oh, right, the pointer's not really working on the screen, but if you can see, there's a little, where the red line ends there on the white dot.
You got Wilbrite and then.
Woolbright
north
and
of that
Ocean, that
is
intersection.
Hibiscus. No, it's Ora and then Hibiscus.
In front of that is a detention pond.
Yeah.
In that area. Yeah.
You can add on to that lovely property, huh?
Well, this is all conceptual.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to go there, but that's where we laid it out just for cost estimating purposes and to give you an idea of
Sure,
what it could look like.
thank you.
From there, we pump into another force main that would cross the intercoastal here just south of Woolbright and into the Boynton system. All right, and with that, I'll turn it back over to Lisa.
Could you eliminate the package plants at that point with the vacuum system?
Well, with the vacuum system, we assumed they would be converted to buffer tanks, so that it would be similar to what you would do with the gravity option, where you convert them to pump stations. So you could keep those in place and just connect the vacuum system to
So
it
you
to
need-
pull the water out of them.
So like for multi-family, you need that package plant to
Well,
push the system?
all you really need is a tank in the ground.
So we can
So
get.
you can eliminate everything above ground, keep the tank, and connect that into your.
Except the 2 houses.
Yeah, you'll have
Correct.
2 new pump houses.
Okay, right, so everything else is, so we could get rid of all the package plants above ground.
Yes.
Both systems,
And
gravity and vacuum.
Yeah,
We
but
would get rid of the package plants.
yeah, with the gravity option, you would still have to put pumps in,
pumps.
and you'd have a
Right.
control panel, but you could eliminate any buildings and other structures there.
Oh, you could eliminate the buildings
Yeah.
with gravity as well?
Yeah, you don't have to, but
Ah,
if
okay.
you want to get rid of them, you can.
You can come back up with me at the end.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about funding options. We're gonna, at the end of this, we're gonna talk about, well, how does this affect you? What's the cost estimate for these 2 types of systems? Approximately, what would it be for each of you individually? But I wanted to do a quick overview on funding options because that was part of our report. And I wanted everyone to first understand that currently, there are no grant funds available. That doesn't mean that next legislative session there may be. And the good thing about the town being proactive with this committee and with this report is now we have this information that we could take to Tallahassee that could possibly make us eligible for some type of funding. Okay, so I'm going from let's do the bottom one first. So there's a non-point source grant program. We call it 319 grant funds. I believe we had gotten those when we did the South Phase project for stormwater. Those deal with reducing non-point source pollution, which would be perfect for a septic to sewer type of a program. But again, like I said, there's no funding for that right now. That doesn't mean that there will be in the future. Usually what happens politically from all the years I've been going to Tallahassee is that when government makes a mandate of a particular area, for example, Monroe County put in a mandate to get their septic tanks off into a wastewater collection system. There were funding opportunities, grant opportunities, and loan opportunities much more for them because of the mandate. And the mandate was over time. It wasn't like you had to make this conversion tomorrow. They are still working on it today, and I think it's been over 10 years now since the mandate's been in place, I believe. Going backwards, there's a clean water state revolving fund. A lot of municipalities in Palm Beach County utilize this state revolving loan fund because it's a low interest loan program. We were one of the first people to use the state revolving loan program here. We procured $7 million for the stormwater improvements for the South Phase and the Hudson Phase projects. That is an EPA loan, but it works through the Department of Environmental Protection, and that's available to us right now. I want to make sure that it is clear that there is no mandate in place currently in Palm Beach County or for us. That doesn't mean that there may be one, but there's no compelling reason to make this conversion happen immediately on a statewide standpoint. Being proactive now and understanding these systems and how much they're going to cost is a great thing to have, because if that were to occur, we will be much further along in presenting our case to potentially get or achieve some grant monies for us to move forward. The third one I just wanted to point out are bonds. Those of you that are involved in municipal government know that a lot of capital projects are done by bonds. The Florida League of Cities, they have their own bond program. It's called the Florida Municipal Loan Council. When I was an elected official, I was on the board of directors of the Florida League, and we promoted working with the Florida League to see if those types of bonds would be available to us as municipalities. They have a very extensive portfolio. It's very impressive. And if and when the time comes, these are funding options that either the town can take on or Boynton Beach Utilities would take on. And then to answer your question, Mr. Chair, the funding for these capital improvements would then ultimately be paid for by the residents over time, like a 30-year bond or a 30-year loan. It would be a question of which type of funding options you would use, and then where would it be addressed, meaning would it be on the utility bill or your tax bill? In my town, we had two bills when we made the conversion in Palm Beach Shores. We had and Adam will talk a little bit about that, the conversion on your property versus the conversion off your property, two different things happening. In my town, we paid the town to convert on our property, and then we paid the City of Riviera Beach utilities over time to pay for the capital improvements. And so those are the options pretty much that are available right now, but for these grant funds that are sitting there waiting, and I would suspect that there will be some type of funding in the near future if the governor continues his initiative, his septic to sewer initiative. So let's go to the next slide. This is just an overall summary of just the existing conditions, okay? So when we talk about maintenance obligations for septic systems, it's the homeowner. Again, not a lot of information from homeowners to staff saying that there's any issues with respect to the systems that they have. Some of them are becoming much more sophisticated and much more expensive. Maintenance obligation for those package plants are usually from the association themselves or property managers that they hire. The systems currently are both, for the most part, below ground. There are a few of those package plants that have control panels that are above ground. For the most part, though, the gravity systems within the multifamily areas and the single-family areas are below ground. With respect to a mechanical system, septic systems, for the most part, are not mechanical. Again, the advanced treatment ones are a little more sophisticated, but the general septic tank and drain fields are not mechanical. The package plants are, and that's where some of the challenges are occurring, is it mechanically trying to keep those plants up to date and in compliance with all the applicable jurisdictions. Utility experience, there is no utility here. Everybody's taking care of their own system. Again, the challenges, routine maintenance for the individual homeowner and maintenance, repair, and replacement, permit compliance for multifamily. Keep in mind that the future challenges would be sea level rise and possible mandates. So that's the summary of the existing system. So let's talk about the summary of the proposed alternatives. Do you want to talk about the cost? Can we talk about the cost a little bit, and then we could both go through that.
All right, on here we have, on the left column, a summary of construction costs for the couple of options that we looked at. The gravity system, on the low end, it would be about 29 million, we think. It could go up as high as 37, depending on once you get into the design and all the challenges that you'll face with rebuilding roads and other things.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
The pointer doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work on the TV. On the vacuum system, this number is actually a little on the high side. We have a tweak to make on the cost estimate. That would be about 22 to 29 million, we estimate. Low pressure system, we think would probably be on the higher end, probably closer to the gravity system, if that one is considered. But we would need to talk to Point Utilities if they'd be even willing to entertain that option. Disruption during construction, the next column. Gravity would be the most disruptive, as you have to, usually these systems go down the middle of the roads. You have to dig up the entire road. The pipes are deeper, so you have to excavate large areas, large impact on the neighborhoods. It does give you the opportunity when you're digging the road up to improve other systems, such as water mains that may need replacement or drainage systems. So if that option's selected, we recommend looking at doing full neighborhood improvements while you're digging up the road as an option. Vacuum system or low pressure are more moderate. The pipes are shallower, so you don't have to dig up the entire road. You still are going to have impacts going across driveways and roadways, but not as much.
That price includes putting everything back the way that it
Yes,
was.
yeah,
correct?
and in the cost estimates, it includes road restoration or driveway restorations. Now, that'll ultimately depend on what the final design, but this is a good conceptual cost. It'll get you in the ballpark. And there is a contingency in there of 25%, so it could be a big swing in the final design cost, but this is what we think for now.
Quick question, are the vacuum lines, do they go under the road, or are they in the grass areas on the side?
They don't have to be under the road. We would try to probably put them in the grass areas as much as possible, or under sidewalks, so that if you have to go in and replace them, you don't have to disturb the road again.
So less disturbance to traffic patterns under the vacuum
That's right.
system.
And the gravity system doesn't have to go in the middle of the road, but generally it does. And the reason for that is you have to dig so deep. It's hard to dig a trench deep enough on the side of the roadway where you're up against private property.
this may be too many details, but isn't there a required distance between water line and the sewer lines?
Yes.
Regardless of whether it's vacuum or gravity?
Yes. Generally, 10 feet's recommended. You can go down to 6, and in some cases even less, 3, depending on vertical separation. But yeah, typically 6 to 10 feet is what you want to maintain.
Can I ask some, as sewer projects go, where would you class this as? I mean, there are a lot of sewer projects, you gotta blast the heck out of it. Stone.
Could you keep your comments till the end, please, the audience?
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't know what the
Thank you.
protocol and the agenda
Please
was,
continue.
there wasn't even an agenda here.
Yeah, well, to answer though, there would be a lot of geotechnical investigation that would have to happen in the design of this. Find out where you have rock, where you'd be cutting through coral versus sand, and that'll impact the costs quite a bit. One thing on the conceptual construction cost, we did a breakdown, a cost per unit here. Just an average between, average from single family and multifamily. So multifamily would end up being a little less out of their cost per unit, but we estimate $18,000 to $23,000 for the gravity system per unit. And on the vacuum system, $14,000 to $19,000 per unit. And that's just the construction costs. That excludes any on-site costs such as removing of the septic systems and reconnecting from the house to the street, because that cost is usually paid by the homeowner. That doesn't have to be, like Lisa said, the town can step up and try to organize that for homeowners and negotiate a better rate with contractors to build that for them. But generally, it's the homeowner's responsibility from the street to their house to make that connection.
Is there a time frame? How long does this take? How long would it take to convert it, starting from day one?
Well, you'd probably want to phase it so you're not disturbing everything all at once. So it's a years-long process in most cases. Yeah.
So let's make it clear though that, Adam gave you those ranges, but understand, there's always the fine print on the bottom there. And the fine print on the bottom is basically the system on the individual properties. Okay? Getting the old system abandoned and then putting in the new system. Also, we're not exactly sure if Boynton Beach would impose a reservation fee. We're not sure. So
The reservation fees are fairly small per
but
homeowner, though.
those are things that need to be discussed when negotiation time comes along. Now, so we put in a range that's in addition to what Adam just said, of $5,000 to $20,000 per unit, meaning per home. There are some folks in town that have 2 of these systems, 2 elaborate mini, in a single-family home, elaborate mini septic tank drain field systems that are very complex. So that range is very broad, for folks, say in the south part of the town. They might have a small system, they might come in and just fill their septic tank with dirt and abandon it and leave the drain field alone. There might be other folks that have significant vegetation in the way, significant improvements that might be in the way, other underground facilities like propane tanks. They may want to abandon and remove their entire drain field because they're in the front of the house and they're elevated to the point where might not be something aesthetically pleasing anymore. So just keep in mind that those on-site changes could range probably anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 per unit. And that might be a separate fee. Like I said, I personally went through this and we had 2 fees. We had the big capital cost that was paid over time, and then we had those individual on-site change over time that was billed by the town, my town, over like 5 years. So it was pretty small.
And the on-site costs there, that would only apply to single-family homes with septic systems that you'd need to abandon and reconnect. With multifamily,
Right,
it wouldn't have that.
multifamily, you wouldn't have that.
I just want to go back to one thing. If I looked at this, I don't know, it may have been what Ron put together, is that there are, I believe, some of the multifamily units that actually just simply have septic systems.
Right.
So
There are some
so they would incur the same.
Similar.
similar, correct.
Yeah, if it's a shared system, it would
The
be
smaller,
reduced per unit.
right.
But, yeah, these numbers are more for a single-family house that has septic and drain field. They would have to abandon
Right.
and then reconnect to the city.
Just want to make the point that
You're right.
not
it's not-
all the multifamily is on package.
That's
good
correct,
point.
because there's some of these smaller condo areas that,
Townhomes.
yeah, like we just did some townhomes on Adams, they have their own small systems. And so, yeah, they're gonna have to do their own conversion, and they could use that as an example. The bigger condo areas have the bigger systems with the package plants, so. Let's talk a little bit, just maintenance obligation. Stay here with me, we could talk together. Or I could talk, right? Because I like to talk. With a gravity system on-site, this is on-site, there's, the homeowner's responsible, there's nothing mechanical, there's really virtually little to no maintenance with that type of system. With a vacuum system, once you get by that vacuum pit, which the utility would be responsible for, from there on out, it's all on the utility. So, and the low pressure system would be the same. As far as above and below ground stations, as we said before, the gravity system for the most part is below. I bet you don't know where all of the lift stations are in town, because you can't see them. They're beautifully landscaped, nobody knows where they are. That would be the same case in a gravity system. However, in a vacuum system, you're gonna have probably, we anticipate, 2 pump station houses, and you saw those pictures and Lou talked about that. We're anticipating that it's going to have to be located on public property. We've had instances where it was asked if they can be located on Crown Colony's property, for example, and that is just not acceptable to some or most of the folks there. So for the most part, in general, you put it in a public place. We're proposing 2 of them, one next to the detention area and the other one across the street on Boynton's property, public property. They have one, and we have one.
Yeah, it may be able to be reduced to 1 master station, but we think 2 is probably more realistic at this point.
If you do a hybrid, are we still gonna only have 2 stations? The one that does the entire north end of town, actually all the way down, even south of Ocean Boulevard here, would be on Boynton property, is what you're proposing.
Yeah, we're proposing that. They didn't propose that,
I
but
understand,
we're proposing.
I understand it, but
Yeah.
that's what's in here.
Yeah,
Okay, at the south end of town, the one on Woolbright, is that going to be able to pick up both gravity from the multifamily in the south and
vacuum.
Are we gonna do vacuum for the single families in the south end of town, or are we gonna connect them to the gravity in the south end of town?
The plan was to connect them to on the vacuum option, have the vacuum system pick up all the single-family homes.
So the south end master station is going to be a gravity and a vacuum?
Well, it'll be a vacuum pump station. The combination with the gravity is the existing gravity that's on some of the multifamily condos. That will flow downhill via gravity to a buffer tank
Where will that be located?
where the existing package plants are.
Okay,
That'll be
so
converted.
all of those will be on site, and then they will go vacuum from
And then-
site to master
That's right.
station?
yep,
And then the
Okay.
master station will be a vacuum station that will collect it all and then pump it across the intercoastal to
Okay.
Boynton.
These numbers that you have here, they're coming from this schedule that you have in Appendix K, is that correct?
Yes.
Can you explain to me what item 15 is on that Appendix K, number 101, please?
can I, would you mind if I just finish through this and then he can answer that?
Okay,
If you don't, is that okay?
sure, I can wait.
Okay. Well, so, so as far as above and below ground, we talked about the pump station houses on the vacuum. A low pressure system, just so everybody understands, those are individual grinder stations. That's at every single house. And they're above ground with a panel. So, just so you know, that's one that, like Lou had mentioned, it's not something that Boynton Beach had proposed for us, but you need to understand that there's 3 different types of systems out there. Mechanical system for gravity, there is none. For vacuum, there's a shared vacuum pit. And then for low pressure would be an individual grinder station. Now, Boynton Beach Utilities has gravity systems throughout their entire utility. I don't know of any existing vacuum systems in Boynton. I think we should ask the question. If they're proposing that for us, are we the guinea pig town? I don't know the answer to that, so we probably should check with them, but for the.
We did check and they don't have.
They don't have any vacuum systems within their utility areas. Low pressure systems, they don't have any low pressure systems either, but they're proposing one on Bamboo and Palmer. That's on the Boynton Beach side. And the importance of that, for you all to know that, is that if they're going to be maintaining this system, let's make sure that they have the proper expertise to maintain something that they've never maintained before. And again, with respect to future challenges, on existing systems, there are future challenges. Gravity systems, we don't see any challenges except for the disruption and the additional expense to put it in. But once it's in place, we don't see any issues to speak of. Challenges are for a vacuum system, and we know this because we deal with people's fences on the property line and swales and trees and plants, that there's going to be probably issues about the shared system for that vacuum pit, even though the vacuum pit is not going to be maintained by the homeowner probably. Just be aware that when we share things, it could be challenging. And then the low pressure system is very invasive because the grinder station is right at the house. So that brings on a whole bunch of other challenges. So I think that concludes our presentation. Again, after this meeting, if there's some tweaks, I know a few of you gave me some information and I appreciate that, like the number of units is off a little bit. We would like to ultimately give this to the commission and hope that the residents and the commission will understand what their options are as we move forward.
Thank you.
Okay? Oh, and one more thing, just it's in their report, but we didn't put it in here. Boynton Beach, the utility treatment plant does have sufficient capacity, so there's no issues with respect to us having to convert because they're at the end of their capacity. That's not the case. In fact, our flows are so minimal in comparison to what they have available that it's not an issue. Okay, yeah, answer that.
Just to get back to your question you were asking about item 15 on the
Yes.
gravity sewer option. So the bridge force main crossing, there's 3 locations where we have to cross existing bridges. So that would be the cost to affix a force main to the bridge so that you were.
So those are bridges within the town?
Yes. On some of the, like on Inlet K.
I understand that.
Yeah, I think there's 3 locations where we'd have that.
And where in here is the cost of the intracoastal crossing?
That's item 16, that's the directional bore That would likely be installed via a directional bore under the intercoastal, typically how those are done. And
So
that's-
700 linear feet is covering 2 crossings?
Yeah, 2 crossings on that option.
Okay. I just thought that number was so small because Boynton was, in their proposal, I believe they had something closer to $1 million for that crossing.
Well, that's just the cost of the directional bore. You'd have to also add in the cost of the pipe and some of the other, we could break that down in a different way if it makes more sense, if you want to see an actual cost with all the included items for that crossing. Like an intercoastal crossing, we could identify it that way. That would,
Well, I mean,
that would help.
1, 2, 3, whatever the number of connections is gonna be a significant, it's gonna be 10% or something of the total cost, so I think that needs to be identified a little better.
Okay, yeah, we can break that down in a different way, make it a little more clear.
And I have a question for Lisa. When your town made a connection, did the utility come up to your border, or did you have to go like across a waterway and connect on their side? In other words, should we be responsible for the intercoastal crossing, or should Boynton be supplying us at our town line?
I believe, in my case, the utility was responsible for the subaqueous line. And the utility was responsible for all of the infrastructure in the public rights of way.
But who paid for it? On that bill you
The-
get?
the-
The town paid for all
the-
that.
Yeah, but we didn't, yes, but we paid those capital costs through the utility,
Right.
not an individual on-site cost.
Yeah,
So-
generally they'll make development pay for development, and they would consider this
So
Right.
developed, so it would be costs on Ocean Ridge, most likely, but that could all be
Yes.
negotiated with them, as they're gonna get fees for water and sewer, so there might be some cost sharing potentially.
Isn't that based on the decision that the town makes whether Boynton will own the pipes or Ocean Ridge will own the pipes? If Boynton owns the pipes, then they would bear the cost of the infrastructure, and then that would go on the utility bills as a capital cost to the residents. They would go out for the grant funding to reduce those costs. If Ocean Ridge owns the infrastructure, then we would pay for that construction. We would go for the grants, and then we would assess the residents as a special assessment on the tax bill. Is that correct?
Theoretically, I think that you would be correct. I don't think, though, that Boynton Utilities, I can't speak for them, but I do not think they are proposing this for the town to own the system.
Correct.
They
They're
are
gonna
pretty
maintain.
adamant that it's gonna be their system, so it's gonna, the capital costs are gonna go through
The utility bill.
through them, through their utility bill. That's
Right.
how it's been perceived to us. And the drinking water distribution system is
It's
different.
separate.
Yeah.
Art?
I was just gonna say, I mean, I would imagine Boynton's position is going to be from their city limits. They're basically, I guess,
Utility limits.
they're basically gonna
Yeah.
say that the cost, all the costs from going underneath the intercoastal and everything on here is the town's gonna be paying for it, whether it's through a bill that comes from the town or it comes from the city. That would be part of the negotiation,
Right.
and to say, okay, but wait a second, you get some benefit here, so you should pay for some of it.
Yeah, because it's gonna support the beachfront park.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so at least the northern
Yeah.
feed or distribution should.
Right, well, part of the benefit is not solely the town of Ocean Ridge. So
Yeah.
keep that in
That's a
mind.
good negotiation point.
You've got other parks too, to the north, that would benefit as well.
Yeah, the county also
The
is
county
involved.
may
Yes.
cost share for that.
The art of negotiation.
Yes.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions? Is that okay? Mr.
Before we
Chair?
get that,
Oh,
I
oh.
want to just read out one of the sentences in your report that I think, you can comment on it if you like. This is in your conclusions and recommendations. You spell out that there is no current compelling reason to abandon the town's existing systems immediately.
Right,
But you then go on to point out that there are potentially other issues,
right.
specifically future mandates, stricter permit conditions, and rising sea levels are factual changes that may force some, if not all, systems to be abandoned. So I think it's important that people know that from your engineering perspective, there's not a design a problem with the existing systems.
That's correct. That's why I wanted to mention it a few times, that the systems that are in place, for the most part, are not an issue currently. It doesn't mean in the future it may be, but we as town staff have not heard or experienced any of our homeowners expressing to us any issues with respect to individual septic tanks and drain fields. There were issues over the years with respect to Crown Colony system, but the good news is, from what I'm hearing, that system has been updated and upgraded, and it's working fine and in compliance.
Lisa, Wellington Arms has voiced to us that they're having problems with their system
So,
currently.
yeah, so Wellington Arms, which is near the Oceanfront Park, has expressed some issues with their package plan. And so I believe there's been some discussions with Boynton, because they have a package plant next to Wellington Arms, that they may be able to symbiotically work together to address those issues. Thank you for mentioning that. That just came up recently.
You know, and I heard Turtle Beach was having problems, and the report from 20 years ago said that they could actually hook on a Briny Breeza system back 20 years ago to solve that problem. Is
Okay.
that correct, or not, or do you know?
I remember that
Yeah.
from a long time ago.
Yeah,
I mean, that could be a possibility,
or a short-term
or a short-term possibility.
fix, yeah. Are they having problems? Are you aware of it?
I haven't, I don't know if anybody's been talking Turtle Beach lady, do you know?
I haven't heard major issues.
I haven't heard
but
major.
The rest of them you see what they are.
Yeah.
It's not gonna go forward usually, but
Yeah.
at the moment, no issues.
No, okay, there you go, yeah.
Yeah.
Minor issues. The biggest concern that we had over the years was Crown Colony. That was the biggest issue. It appears to be somewhat solved, though we have to keep an eye on it. Oh, Gail left.
So there's not immediate need to.
Right, that's
rush
why I
into-
wrote
Yeah.
that.
Well,
that-
there's no
that's-
mandate.
Yeah.
There's no
currently,
mandate right now.
But it could be one
Right,
in
right.
the future.
I got it.
But, you know, the commission needs to be commended, both the past and the present, because we looked at this before, and then we had a huge issue, and we addressed that. Now we need to look at this again, and we are. And so if and when that time comes, we'll have this information available so that we could meet with our state representatives and legislators to show to them that we've done our homework and what impact's gonna be on us. And if and when a mandate starts coming down the pike, or we think that it is, I mean, we're ready, you know, we're closer than other folks in our ability to articulate what the issues are and where we need to go if there is, in fact, a mandate coming down the line.
Was your town mandated to do it?
No,
You weren't, were you?
we were not mandated to do it.
Then how did you get it past the citizens?
So, it was not easy to get it through, the citizens. One of the reasons why we did it was along our ocean, the Marriott came in and wanted to put in timeshares, which were more ownership driven than the old facilities that were there were crumbling and falling apart from the 50s. In fact, one of the hotels, the second floor fell into the first floor because John D. MacArthur built it and he used beach sand for concrete, and these were the stories that I was told. And so when the Marriott came in and gave their proposal, we were just ecstatic to have them as our partner. However, the downside was we had to put in a collection system. But the good news is even though it was painful, we got new roads. In some areas, while the roads were being, while the gravity system was being put in, some of the water mains got replaced. And we're still driving on the same roads from way back when, like 25 years ago. So that's why. It wasn't a mandate. Nobody complains about not that I've been a commissioner for 15 years there, and I don't recall anybody complaining about the system that's in place now.
Are you proposing we have Marriott come in and build a big hotel?
No, I'm not proposing. No, and I know that every town has a different makeup, and that's not the makeup here. It's not the makeup here, no. But for us, it was like 6 stories. We have a height limit as well in Palm Beach Shores. If you want to go higher, it's the vote of the people. And every time we vote, it goes down in flames. So we don't have high rises either. But Marriott was willing to put in like 6 stories, like 6 of them in a row. If you've ever been there, you can see that the profile between Palm Beach Shores and the rest of Singer Island is quite different. So we did not, I don't believe we had any grant funding at the time.
So you all did it, finance it on your own?
Yeah, we paid for it over time.
Any more comments, Bob?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you, Lisa. I'd like to just open it for a couple of minutes if people would like to come up, identify themselves, and ask any questions. Or make comments.
Jerry Lauer, 2 Harbor Drive North. I have a couple of questions that have to relate mostly with sea level change and the study that you've put together. Are any of the sea level rise concerns with underground lift stations and the construction that would be related to it, are your estimates based on keeping roads at the current height, or are we accommodating a predicted sea level rise of some form?
I'd like to expand that a little bit more.
Okay.
Can we address any difference in vulnerability between vacuum and gravity with the concerns that Jerry is talking about?
Over the years, we've been raising the roads in some areas where we find that the elevations are extremely low, and as sea level rises, the amount of time water leaves the road is taking longer and longer when the tide goes up and then the tide comes down. The challenge with that is we have older homes that were built in the 50s, and we cannot adversely, as a town, affect them. And so we can only raise our roads to a certain elevation so that they can get in their driveway and we're not sheet flowing onto them. So it's more of a constructability challenge than a sea level challenge. Now, sea level is causing, the sea level rise is causing a little more of a nuisance as time goes on. But the constructability challenges of raising a road is really the problem. And as the town continues to improve the types of driveways that they use, it makes it even more difficult for us to go in and match their travertine driveways than back in the day when we had Chattahoochee, which all we would do is shovel it up, raise it, and put it back. So it just makes it more complex. That's sort of answer your question? No.
No, it didn't. I guess my question would be, the proposals that you're outlining today, do they take into account a potential 1 or 2 foot sea level change? Or are we going to be coming back in 20 years and re-engineering and raising the level of these things as roads have to come up?
Well,
I think it hasn't been designed to that level.
Had-
It's conceptual right now.
yeah.
And raising the elevation, if you did the gravity system, that would give you an opportunity to raise the roads when you construct, because you have to reconstruct the road anyway in most cases. But that would definitely be a consideration when you get into the design of it. If you're using a 2060 sea level estimate, you might want to bake that into your design. But it might be.
What's
Just
the-
added the lift stations, though. I mean, was there sea level rise consideration for those since they're underground?
You may set the top, you have to set the 100-year flood elevation. So that you may say, okay, instead of doing it for what the elevation is now, if you expect a 50-year lifespan on these, you would set it at a 2060 expected 100-year flood stage.
So it might not be underground.
Well, at the top, you may build it up a foot or 2 from where some of the old ones might be right now.
Are you talking about the height of the wet well?
The top of the wet well, yeah. You don't want that to ever be flooded.
Correct. That's what I was,
Well, one of the concerns that one would have with lift stations, because those are your deepest pieces of infrastructure, you're worried about buoyancy. You don't want these things popping out of the ground. So what you have to take into consideration is what that sea level rise is in 2060 or whatever that is, and then make sure that these lift stations that may be 10, 15 feet under the ground, that they're properly designed so that it don't pop up out of the ground. Now granted, the top of the wet well has to be at whatever elevation it is, but you have to be concerned about what's under the ground, because otherwise you have a non-functional lift station at some point in the future.
Aren't the well wells already underwater?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
They're in the
So
water.
why would sea level rise make a difference to push them up?
it's just buoyancy, as
the
a ship
water
is in the
rises.
water, it just rises. And so if there's a fixed structure under there, the pressure will just push up. If you remove all the water out of your pool and it's below sea level, boom, that's what's gonna happen. So,
So we would have to make that adjustment when we calculate or prepare construction plans to address sea level rise. One of them would be a buoyancy issue.
Yeah, the cost wouldn't
But-
be significantly different.
Different,
to address it.
yeah.
It would just, you'd put it at a higher elevation and assume that elevation for whatever future date you're wanting to design for it.
I have 2 more. In a shared vacuum system where your house and my house has a cooperative little pit in between it, would an overload by one of the properties, say mine just went crazy and I was pumping all sorts of stuff into it, would that have the potential to impact another home on the system? And would you create a setup where each individual house has their own rather than sharing with their neighbor?
Well, so that's why that's why the vacuum system is a challenge. Those vacuum pits usually are shared between 2 to 4 homes, so it's not even, you don't get your own. When we design systems, we take into consideration sea level rise. We'll take into consideration what we call peak flows. What we call a factor of safety. So we'll take the peak flow, we'll calculate it based on the number of bathrooms, and then add a 2 safety factor on it. I'm just, to show that there's a peak flow, as if 2 families are having a football party on Sunday afternoon and it's the winter time and they're all flushing the toilet at the same time. It's supposed to be designed to handle that. Now, will there be issues in the future of people complaining that they're having a party next door and I can't flush my toilet for what, I foresee that happening. But maybe they would then call Boynton Beach Utilities for that.
Utility would have to come out, and if they're flushing socks and they're clogging the system, then utility would have to come out and fix it and hopefully get them to address the issue if there is one. But yeah, there could be times when your neighbor impacts you.
I
promise I'll quit after this one.
It's a good question.
Which type of the systems that you're proposing is most or least impacted by potential power outages? We get into a hurricane, we get into somebody drives their truck into a power pole. Which of these systems is the best?
The vacuum is probably the easiest because there's no electricity required at your vacuum pits. The only power source you need is at the two large pump stations. And if you have a backup generator there, then you only need two backup generators to have sewer for the whole town.
And-
All the other options would require, if you had the gravity system, you have 24 pump stations that all require power. Or if you have the low pressure, you have, everyone's got their own.
Everyone's got their own.
Yeah.
Delray Beach encountered that issue where they had over 150 and they didn't have enough generators for them. So in your estimates, if there were a vacuum system, you'd have incorporated into that backup generator systems, anticipating that.
Yeah.
Each
You
of those
wanna have a
buildings are-
backup generator at each station.
Thank you, Neil.
You're welcome.
Rich Schmidt, Ocean Harbor Estates, 9 Ocean Harbor Circle. I have a few questions with regard to the package plan. So we have a package plan. So assuming this goes through, it sounded like your design, whether it's vacuum or whether it is gravity, would incorporate a tank in our system for a collection point, from there to the other. That means that the balance of the system would be abandoned. Does that fall onto the association's responsibility to deal with the abandoned system, or is that included in your cost estimates to take care of the old systems?
The cost estimate only looked at
Could
the
you,
cost.
could you come to the mic, please?
Yes. The cost estimate's only considered the cost of converting the wet well tank itself. It assumed everything else would remain as is. So if you want to remove any other infrastructure associated with the package plan, that would be additional on the cost.
Okay.
On the,
So the second question is that a follow-up, does the state require that abandoned plants or tanks, or the county or some other thing, that these associations then fill them or remove them if they're abandoned? Do you know? And then I'm gonna add, the third question, add on to that is we have an injection well system, that's obviously a hole down to the aquifer. I'm assuming that there's some sort of abandonment.
Yeah, you would need to
That would
abandon
be
that.
abandoned.
So that again, those costs would fall onto the association with respect to having to take care of those injection wells.
I think that,
injection wells for concrete will be abandoned.
yeah.
If you got a state guidelines, you can't leave that tank.
Yeah.
Right.
I think as far as the cost, that would have to be, that would be something that would be negotiated, that Boynton Utilities could do the abandonment for you. The system upstream of that would hopefully stay the same. So that would not be a cost incurred on you because you already have your own gravity system. It's just right at the package plan. Who's going to incur that cost? That would be as we move further along the process, that would be a discussion item.
So the only thing that I would ask as representative for the other members is that, if there are any abandonment costs or things that are not included, that will be the responsibility in this conversion. Much like you had that little asterisk there for homeowners to remove
Right.
their waste field, that the associations have some heads up that they're going to have a cost to deal with injection wells, abandoned tanks, and other things to get their property back into compliance with any codes.
Yes. Sir, you'll probably be notified of something early on in the design before construction, because you're going to have to get a permit from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection for the entire sewer system, no matter what you put in. And then any abandonments, there's going to be some requirements there. So they're going to make some general requirements, and that's going to be part of the bid package, whatever that may be. So to say it's your responsibility or the other responsibility, we don't know the answer right now, but that would have to be negotiated with with the town, with the city of Boynton Beach?
We'll get that
utilities?
information for
And
you.
you'll get that.
Simple answer. Betty?
This is Julia.
Hold the mic down there. There you go.
Is there any differential in cost if Ocean Ridge runs its own pipes and owns its own pipes? If Boynton Beach runs the pipes and owns the pipes? And if Boynton Beach runs the pipes, are we gonna pay for, is Ocean Ridge going to be, run the cost of running it past their beach here and the inlet? In other words, are all of those in negotiation for the final cost?
Their cost sharing and the county cost sharing for the park at the end of the line is obviously going to have to be integrated into this.
Yeah,
The pipes, I don't think at this point we were looking at forming our own utility district. So,
you mean,
which is what we would have to do if we owned everything and et cetera.
I don't like Boynton Beach owning the pipes.
I'm not surprised, Betty, thank you. All right, I think it's time. You go ahead last comment.
Please state your name and address.
Oh, sure. Nancy Hogan, 37 Hibiscus Way, Ocean Ridge. And I just had a couple of questions, and thank you for the presentation. Not an easy thing to do, but we want to know. Do you have your brochure that some people have available to the rest of us? It's right there in the chair. Yeah.
Do we have it on
That's
the
a
website?
copy of the.
Oh, is it on the website?
On the website.
It'll be
It
on
is
the
on the
web.
website. Okay, I can work with that. I've been married 48 years, so we've been through a lot of, not a lot, but too many sewer projects. And it would just be my opinion from the little that I've heard, that this isn't very complex. I mean, I think there's a lot of major geography and so forth that can be troublesome. So I'm looking forward to it. But were you able to come up with a dollar, not a dollar amount, but a range of the expected cost to homeowners? And I didn't hear that. Is it in your brochure?
That was
or
on the
because I
bottom of
came
one
in
of the
late?
slides.
I'm sorry?
That's on the bottom of one of the slides in their
We
presentation.
could tell you, we could tell you that.
Okay. And lastly, I'm heading out to Dubai and Abu Dhabi Saturday, so I'm gonna be with developers, so I'm gonna ask, what do you do about this water problem? Because they got sand and water, that's it. So it'll be interesting to see. And our secretary is going to be there. He's gonna come in, our Secretary of State, and he's gonna come in at the same time. So I'm gonna be ducky and asking about sewer projects.
Great,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
All right, that closes the public comment time. Anything from the members of the committee? No? Okay. The other half of this report, we don't have time for today, but I would like to invite Lisa back again. If you could come back at our next meeting, and we'll address the water issue, potable water. Are you okay with that, Tracy?
Yes.
And before we even get there, I've reviewed this package and I have some comments. I'll give them to you before we even get to that meeting rather than waiting. Do you have any things to add about potable water for Lisa for next time?
Not at this time.
Not at this time? How about?
No, I don't.
Okay. We'll just go on record if any of the committee members do have comments before. We'll try to get them to you individually.
We'd
And
like to final the report, so if there's anything that you find in here that needs tweaking, like I said, we have a few, just let us know.
okay.
I mean, this is not a water distribution report, but,
I understand. No, I
if
understand.
there's anything that we need
No,
to,
we'll
tweak, let's tweak it now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can give you comments that during the meeting, we made comments.
Right,
If we have other ones, and I've said a couple to you before the meeting,
right,
I'll put them in writing, for you to address the sewer thing with the town commission, and the water thing, we'll just leave completely open for next time.
okay.
Anything else?
What did you and Tracy decide about that?
back to finish off our meeting, yep, Art's directing me here very well. The item number 2 was a report by Ron Kern. That draft will be available as part of this meeting online when the package is put together. If you remember, we had open comments from the public last time, and we've been trying to collect information on package plants throughout the town, who's responsible for them, capacities, condition, whatever information people have been willing to disclose. Ron Kern has rolled all that up in a preliminary version. He's going to continue working on it, make a presentation on it when he attends the next meeting. And the final item that we have is the topic of annexation. I know people have addressed this both publicly and privately to different members here and to the town, and I think Tracy has an initial comment on that.
So, since there were questions from the public regarding another town or city's ability to annex any portion of the town of Ocean Ridge, we received a legal opinion from our town attorney. And I'll just read that for the public and put it on the record. Annexation in Florida is governed by Florida Statutes, Chapter 171. Section 171043 provides the requirements that must be met for an area to be annexed. He highlighted the area under paragraph 1 in that section that provides that only unincorporated areas may be annexed. No part of an incorporated area may be annexed. And as you know, the town of Ocean Ridge in total is incorporated. So unless the town of Ocean Ridge decides in the future to unincorporate and not be a town, another municipality may not annex any part of the town of Ocean Ridge, regardless of how many services they provide to the town or what pipes they own in our town.
Okay? So I think that closes our meeting. Do I have? Okay, we're talking about what we're going to do at our next meeting. We're going to have a report from Ron Kern, and we're going to address potable water.
What is the date of that meeting?
And the date for that meeting is going to be our standard third Thursday of the month.
At 8:30.
At 8:30.
Pardon?
At 8:30.
At 8:30 in the morning.
I think it's,
It's October 17th.
right.
October 17th,
Also starting at 8:30?
starting at 8:30.
It's actually a Thursday.
Right.
Right, third Thursday.
And I guess
Today
I'll
was-
set a wake-up call.
Today was just an anomaly because of,
Yeah, Ron thought he could be here for this one, but I guess his schedule changed.
Yes, yes. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Sure. Motion.
Second.
Adjourn. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, I appreciate your time.
Thanks very much. So I have a question for you and Lisa, which is indirectly related. So this whole seawall issue.
Haven't seen you in a long time. I see you here, you see me here. How are you?